you're joining our How to Avoid Common Pitfalls of a Scrum Master. So welcome. As I said, Andrea Floyd, and I'm a principal consultant primarily in the area of Agile enterprise transformations, as well as scaled agility here at AgileThought. I'm joined by fellow Agile thinkers, Adam Ulrey, who is an enterprise Agile coach, and Dan McKay, who is a Scrum Master. So you're in good hands with some of our great Agile thinkers. Before we get started, just for those who may not have a familiarity with AgileThought, I just thought we'd share a couple of high-level statistics with you. We're basically organized into 3 distinct practices, but we work together to provide a full-stop solution for our clients around your Agile journeys or software needs. So we have an innovate practice, and that's where Adam, Dan, and myself work. We consult with our clients on Agile and help them start and initiate journeys. Then we have a large practice around building software solutions for our clients. And then ultimately, if you have a need for some organization to sustain or support your solution or those solutions we build, we have a run practice. We're primarily located across Latin America and the United States. And as of today, we have just over 3,000 consultants working for our firm. With that, welcome once again to our AgileThought virtual community. We'll probably going to resume doing these monthly, and would love ideas on future topics that you might have. So there'll be an opportunity to get more information on that at the end of today's session. Now, as we look forward to today's topic, which again is how to avoid common pitfalls of Scrum Masters, I wanted to just let you know that this is really an open conversation, and looking at all the wonderful participants who've joined us today, I'm expecting it to be a great learning opportunity for each of us to learn from one another around those common pitfalls you have experienced. So between Dan, Adam, and myself, we'll share some common ones that we've seen, and then open it up for a discussion on what you're seeing around those same pitfalls. It's free form. We invite you to verbally jump in, to chat with us through chat, but to really engage and add your voices to this conversation. So just so your knowledge, we are recording this event. We like to make it available out on our SharePoint, our website. For those who aren't able to attend today, it's there, and you can go back and participate in earlier virtual community events if you weren't able to join those. So that's a opportunity to continue to learn and expand. With that, we're off and running. Again, our topic today is how to avoid common pitfalls as a Scrum Master. And one of the first pitfalls that I see sometimes, and when I have a conversation about, is the perception that the Scrum Master is viewed as a meeting organizer. And I guess this is my first reach out to you guys. Do you see this happening within your teams or your organization, where somehow the Scrum Master is deemed to be a facilitator and an event organizer rather than a fully engaged individual on the team, and they're more of an administrative role? Are you guys seeing that? Feel free to just verbally respond or put your response in chat. I'm going to.
And I saw a thumbs up on the videos as well.
Okay.
The Zoom icon.
I'll just add, so I think I've seen it in other organizations, maybe not so much where I am now. And I think it has a lot to do with just educating what that role is.
Great, because that was my next question. Why do we think this happens? And it could be that I think I've seen with various clients, sometimes it's a new way of working and a shift, and you might have used maybe project managers and maybe a more traditional waterfall type approach, and maybe that was something that your project manager used to do. And if the individual who's now shifting into the role of the Scrum Master, sometimes you carry over those old expectations. But the reality is, as we know in the Scrum Guide, that this is something that can be agreed upon, you know, as a team, and you can collaborate together on what works best for you as a Scrum team. Do you need, or would you like, and does the Scrum Master have the time and the capacity maybe to set up your recurring Scrum events? Absolutely could happen, but it should be a conversation. It shouldn't be an expectation. I think another way when you see this happening in your organization is to continue as continuously as a Scrum Master bring forward ways to reinforce that that isn't an aspect of this role, that it is a conversation, and that the team should be self-organizing around their own needs to collaborate, and so that they can feel free to initiate any kind of sync ups or collaboration sessions that they might need. So you can either I've seen some teams have a really good discussion about this as they're establishing working agreements, or if it's a behavior that they start to see emerge, they'll take a moment to refresh their working agreement to make sure it's clear on what that expectation is. And then, you know, we all know that this is a team sport. It's everybody's responsibility to organize and have those deeper collaboration conversations to get the planned work to done during the sprint. So as a Scrum Master, just looking and acknowledging that this may happen, but how do I help coach and shift the behavior in the team so it doesn't become an expectation, and that I can help to, you know, as we move forward in some of the other pitfalls, we'll continue to want to reinforce the value of each of the roles, and very much so around the value that a Scrum Master brings. Anybody else have any ideas of things that you can do to help combat this particular pitfall?
Hi, may I?
Yes, please.
Hello, Andrea. Adam,
Hi,
hello, how are you? The biggest obstacles, right, of viewing Scrum Masters as a meeting organizing or existing the project management team, number one, we should not see everything in a team as a meeting, right? It's events, and every event should have a purpose. And depend on the team maturity, depend on organization maturity, focusing on why we need to meet, right? Why do we need to connect? Okay, it's the whole purpose of what the Scrum Master role is, to facilitate, not to organize and not to control that meetings. Focusing on why we are gathering together, what is the purpose, what is the outcome, what is the outputs.
I love that. Understanding the why behind why we're even coming together, so you get that value from the exchange. I see some comments in chat too. Some folks are saying that, you know, this is a great conversation to have at the start as you're forming the team, so you can manage those expectations and you can get clarity around what will work for us. And then what I loved you said, Alexander, is around the why, and why that should or shouldn't be organized that way. And then see something, product owner thinks the Scrum Master is their personal assistant. That makes me smile. Again, you know, as you're coming together initially as a team, great time to have some clarifying conversations and to reinforce, so we model the behaviors that we hope the team adopts, but that can even happen as you've been working together as a team. So staying aware of that, I think that's amazing. So great feedback in the chat there. So thank you for that. I'm going to now toss the ball over to our next Adam to take us through the next pitfall.
All right, thanks, Andrea. Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Yolri. I'm a senior consultant at AgileThought in our Innovate line of service, and I'm happy to be with you today. I'm going to talk to you about our next pitfall here, which is the team continues to fall behind. due to taking unplanned work into the sprint. So sure, a lot of you may have seen this before. I'd like to start by talking about what unplanned work is. What does that mean when we say unplanned work? Well, it's really just what it sounds like. It's work the team didn't plan to do in pursuit of the sprint goal. So sometimes it can be in the form of additional work needed, maybe additional work's needed on the sprint backlog in order to meet the sprint goal. Now that could be due to a technical reason or maybe a business reason that's discovered. Often it's due to the team not having enough information prior to selecting items for the sprint backlog. So when they're in sprint planning, maybe they don't quite realize some of the things they're going to find, or maybe they don't understand that. I think that can sometimes be pretty apparent, and other times it's a little bit hidden. But either way, one way you can kind of avoid this pitfall as a Scrum Master, you can coach the team on effective product backlog refinement. So product backlog refinement is the act of breaking down the work and further defining product backlog items into smaller and more precise items. Okay, and just in time and just enough is sort of my rule of thumb on that, on to know how far to go there, right? The use of a definition of ready can really help teams have PBIs refined to the correct level before pulling that work into the sprint. So as part of your refinement, if you're using this definition of ready, or what it means for items to be ready for the team to pull into the sprint, then that can really help the teams get that level of detail they're looking for. The team really should refine items until they meet that team's definition of ready. See some comments in the chat coming in here. Appreciate that. Thank you guys for chiming in. I'm going to talk to you about another reason, though, that this can happen. It can be from managers sort of driving by the team. Perhaps a manager will come by and find a developer they have a relationship with, or one of the team members who they know well, and can request work. Can you just do this for me, please? I need this done, right? And it's new work to the team. So what do you think we can do about that? One reason, or rather one thing I think we can do that will help us avoid this pitfall is to create a working agreement as a team. A team working agreement can really help the team with a policy for new work coming in, how to deal with that work. An agreement can help the team on how to deal with new information they learn during the sprint. So having this policy or agreement that the team comes up with themselves about how to deal with these different situations could really help the team avoid that pitfall. I see some comments there about the client can sometimes feel they can go directly to developers with changes, and that's exactly what I'm talking about here. So that's a way to avoid that pitfall. And then one more is tracking the unplanned work can really help you avoid this pitfall. What are some ways you think you could track unplanned work? If you can think of some, unmute and shout them out, or type it into the chat. It'd be kind of neat to hear some methods people have.
Well, I'll toss out one. I've seen it. Oh, no, please go, whoever was talking.
Sorry, thank you, Andrea. This is Jadine. I think one method I know it's worked for us in the past is, of course, tracking. That's one of the benefits of the retrospectives, right? We want to be able to communicate any changes and be transparent in that. But documenting that as even as it could possibly be an impediment to this is something that's coming up. Do we need to revisit it? And then to your point, Adam, then it goes back to maybe we need to revisit the working agreement, but just tracking that through those, as we talked about, those ceremonies in the retrospective to make sure that's a change that's coming.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I love it. And one more I'm going to throw out there that you may or may not have heard of or used is a waste snake. I had a client who actually taught me this, and I thought it was the neatest thing and have started using it since with other clients. But what she did is made a visual of a snake. And every time a new request came in, that became a node in the body of the snake. And the snake grew over time as more of those requests came in. It really highlighted the impact of those requests. So I'm about out of time for this particular one. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dan McKay, who's going to talk to you about the next one.
I'm a Scrum Master with the Innovate line of service with AgileThought. And I just want to let you all know that we really appreciate y'all's input and feel that you have so many valuable things to add to this, which is the reason why we're doing this. So right now, I am tasked with the Scrum Master isn't seen as valuable as a developer. I don't really think it's just the Scrum Master. So the Scrum Master has its tasks. There's 3 accountables in the new Scrum guide. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this, but there's the Scrum Master, there's the PO, and there are the developers. And in the developers, you're going to have people who are not just developers, but you also have the QA people, you have other disciplines in there. Well, what if a QA person looks at a developer and says, well, you guys aren't quite as valuable as I am, because it's up to us to make sure that everything is just exactly right. So I think this is a universal problem, and it just really needs to be something where we look at, I have responsibilities, you have responsibilities, and you have responsibilities. And we have the trust and we have the respect that you can do what it is that you're supposed to do, and you respect me for doing the things that I'm supposed to do. But I would like to get y'all's input on this. I'm not sure who else, a Scrum Master, or what roles you might play, but has anyone else felt this particular thing that your team didn't feel you were as valuable as they were? And how do you comment?
This is Gail. Sorry, my camera's not on for various reasons today, but I'm a Scrum Master. I've been a Scrum Master for years, and I've been on development teams where they value the Scrum Master, and I'm currently in a situation where the Scrum Master is not valued, but yet you see the team stumbling and doing things and going over capacity and all kinds of things, not feeling empowered. But it comes from, I think, from an organizational view. They have some teams, analysts or Scrum Masters, they kind of just throw anybody in the Scrum Master role. So I think that's partly where it comes from as well, is that it comes organizational wise. So the thing I've done is is really just create value in that Scrum Master role. I think one of the best lines I've heard about Scrum Master is the role is as big as you let it be. And so while the company has allowed anyone to come in and be Scrum Master, sort of just do the ceremonies, I've come in to actually bring some value to the team, but it is an uphill battle.
And that's a very key, what you just said there, Gail, is bringing value to the team. And I think that you're right. I remember when I first got involved in Scrum, just anybody could sit in being a Scrum Master. It was just a matter of, like you said, going through these ceremonies. But as we know, these are now called events, and possibly that's the reason why they've been, renamed. And I too love what Adam just said. I love when you say the role is as big as you let it to become. We enable. I think this is the one time that being an enabler is a good thing. We enable our team to become, really good at Scrum. But not only do we enable them to do this, we focus on that. We help coach them to be there. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add to this? Yeah, Mariano, I see you.
Yeah, Dan, and everybody, good morning, afternoon already for me, please. So it goes hand in hand with value. My experiences have been both, where where either certain people feel that you might not be adding as much value because they're already at a very efficient level, And usually it could be either leadership or the PO saying, hey, you know what, you got the team to a certain level of efficiency, and they see you as a resource more than anything. And I remember somebody that is actually in this team today saying, hey, you know, if you got the team playing super well and you make them a Super Bowl champion, why would you take the coach out, right? So, and that was you, Dan Newman. I will never forget that. It's a perfect analogy. So, I mean, it could be in either or end. Either you're really not adding value, and then that's on you, or they see that you brought the team to a certain level and they're like, well, we don't need you anymore. Thank you very much. But it doesn't work that way. And the way to overcome that is through really good retrospectives in which you can amplify the learnings of things that are going very well and still fixing those things that still need to be polished. So it's always up to you to provide that value, right? But there's always that opportunity available. You just need to take it and run with it.
And, you know, I agree with everything you said, and I value that. It's crazy, though, because this is the job. When I first became a Scrum Master, I was told, this is the job that you are trying to work yourself out of. Meaning, you want to train everyone else up so well in Scrum that you're really not necessary. And so it kind of, what you just said is kind of crazy. It kind of resonates with that. But you really are always necessary because you always got to learn something else, you know? So with that said, I think I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Andrea to let her take on how the Scrum Master assigns work.
Thanks, Dan. Well, yes, I'm going to guess some of you have seen this, and the why behind this behavior is an interesting thing to explore. It can be happening for a myriad of reasons. Maybe the Scrum Master is perceived to have domain knowledge or expertise, or it could be that maybe you don't have truly T-shaped or cross-functional teams and you have very specialized knowledge. So there's this this ability that people say, well, I'll take, you get this because this is in your domain, or this takes this specific skill. So I'm sure there's a vast reasons of why this is happening. And I'd love to hear if you're experienced this, your organization, the why. If it is happening, what can you do, right? So going back to the Scrum Master and the importance of this role on the team. Well, to make sure that the team understands that the lovely thing about Scrum is that you get to determine the plan for the sprint together. You formulate that sprint goal as a team. So you have an active voice in articulating what value the team is going to deliver for that sprint. Each of you brings to the table a different way of thinking and understanding, whether it's the product owner understanding what would be valuable for the end users or the customers of the product versus technologists on the developers portion of the team saying that, there's some dependencies we need to be aware of. And all of that's going to go into influencing the body of work. But as a team, you get to determine what that body of work is that you're planning on doing for that upcoming sprint. So you're the master of your own domain. And from that, what we like to do as Scrum Masters is encourage teams to pull work, and rather than pushing work. That's a fundamental way of working in Scrum. And so as the Scrum Master and as the coach to this, we want to make sure that we're encouraging the teams to be self-managing and understand that they have the power and authority and knowledge to determine what they might want to be working on, whether that's something that they have specialized knowledge on, maybe it's something they want to learn more about. Maybe it's a growth opportunity. So we really want to create an environment where we promote the practice of pulling work rather than pushing it. The other thing is that because we all get to understand how we get to put our fingerprints on the sprint goal and agree to what our plan is for the sprint, we want to make sure that we're in the game together, and we understand that we need to have support and accountability for supporting one another to help all of us to get to done, meaning that we honor the definition of done for each of those product backlog items that we're pulling in for the sprint. So again, this is that beauty of self-organizing around that work. And what I love as a Scrum Master is that I'm there to help create this environment which you get to be the master of your own domain, and it's a team sport. Have you guys been facing this at your organizations? Do you have any techniques that you use when you start to see this behavior emerge?
I think that you said it best when you used the word influencer, because during the iteration planning sessions, suggesting to team members to pick up an item or to challenge themselves or to work with somebody else on something that the work can be broken down is always beneficial. And you basically influence people to step out of their comfort zones.
I love that. And I know that we were just talking about the word coach. Honestly, to me, that's such a huge value of a Scrum Master, is to look beyond just the, you know, black and white, but to how do you enable and create an environment where people can thrive and grow. And so that ability to influence is critical in that. So that's a big win. Any other ideas?
Hi, this is Paula. If you mean full work from the sense of stories and tasks that were created during sprint planning, my team does an excellent job of negotiating who does what and what the tasks involved in the stories are. But on a different angle, if you mean full work for into a sprint or determine what stories need to be pulled into a sprint, we work in, I do not work in IT, I work in a non-IT shop. And we always look for the stakeholders to pull us in, because we have a very high value team that rotates among different sites.
And I get that. That's a great example of what lens are you looking at those words through. So great point, Paula. And yeah, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking more once you've had the sprint plan put together, it's about how do you actually get the work done through the sprint. But great perspective. So thank you for that. Okay, with that, I think we're out of time on this particular pitfall. I'm gonna throw it back over to Adam to take us through the next one.
All right, thanks, Andrea. So this pitfall is the Scrum Master is there to increase velocity. So for this pitfall, the Scrum Master is really accountable for the Scrum team's effectiveness, but this doesn't always equate to velocity, does it? There are a couple of issues with this pitfall. Right, the purpose of the Scrum Master is not to increase velocity. What is their purpose? Well, we just said their purpose is there really to increase the team's effectiveness, to establish Scrum, right? To make that team as effective as they can be. Someone earlier talked about when you get the team to the point where they're winning the Super Bowl, right? Well, that's kind of how we look at that Scrum Master, as that coach who helps the team be as great as they can. And increasing velocity, that certainly is not the highest and best use of their time. The best use is more in serving the team to make them effective. That's what that Scrum Master does, right? I'd like to kind of throw this out to the group here and ask you, why do you think people don't understand the primary purpose of the Scrum Master? Why is it that people get confused and think things like this?
It's our actions. It's what we demonstrate to them. So of course they come up with that observation and it's formed.
I like it. Mariano, did you have something to say too?
Yeah, it comes also from the initial notion of a lot of people get sold on Agile for speed to market in terms of how fast we can deliver. So if the proposition is not explained fully from the get-go, that the speed to market comes from iterations and adding value, incremental value as you go, people think that agility or any agile methodology, for what matters, will actually accelerate the entire process. And therefore they're looking for that, for the team to deliver more instead of becoming efficient. And there's a big difference with that. So it could be that as a resultant at the beginning, there's an increase on velocity depending on many factors. But that will, like you have on your slide, that will plateau at some point in time, because the whole point is making the team predictable and understanding exactly what they're going to be able to deliver, and deliver on a cadence with a determined amount of value that is tangible, right? So that's the whole point. But yet again, there's, for many of these points that you guys are touching base on that are very real, it probably also goes back to the initial proposition and what Agile really is and how it can help the business. And at times it's sold or just the initial intent is understood, I should say, as, hey, we're going to be super fast, and it has nothing to do with that. So,
yeah, I like, Mariano, I like quite a few things you're saying there, and a couple of points you're helping to make for us here, especially around really helping them understand that value is more important to focus on, right? Like I really like what you're saying there. Velocity is not even the best measure of a person's of a team's performance, right? So what would we want them to do? Well, we'd rather them focus on value. So yeah, thanks for reinforcing that. And then, you know, other KPIs are probably better measures anyway. So a few that come to mind that might be better could be cycle time, team member turnover, escape defects. You know, there are a lot of them you could consider, and collaborate with the team on what might be better measures of the team's performance. Another way to avoid the pitfall is to teach that a mature, healthy team's velocity will plateau. And again, Mariano, you said that well. They will become a nice, healthy, mature team will become stable and predictable. And that's actually very valuable to have a predictable team, because it helps us reliably forecast and plan our work and know what to expect. So that's huge. And then lastly, one thing I wanted to touch on is really coaching everyone to focus on value delivery as that key measure. Again, nice comments there from the group. I think that's what we want everyone focusing on. It gets everyone thinking about how to deliver value and really creates this shared purpose. Okay, I think I'm about out of time on this one, so I'm going to turn it over to Dan next. And Dan, don't forget to unmute.
So I was just going to say, we inspect and we adapt, and I saw that I was still on mute, so thank you very much. The Scrum Master doesn't take advantage of the retrospective, and several of you have already mentioned the retrospective. So I know that some of us have a respect for the retrospective and understand what it's really all about. So I'd like to open it up before I start talking. I'd like to get some of y'all's thoughts on what kind of experiences have y'all had with your teams when they go, the retrospective, are you kidding me? Anybody want some input or give some input?
Hi, Dan. I can talk. My name is Valerie. I'm a Scrum Master here in Michigan for a mechanical development team. So we're not software, and it's very new. I'm their token Scrum Master first hire. So we're kind of learning and rolling as it goes. So this is a common problem for us. I think the cadence of doing the retrospective as an event is not the problem. It's finding the time amongst all of the other fires that are going on and the technical lesson learned and those type of topics. So it's finding the time to conduct a good one, I think, is my biggest pitfall.
Agreed. Okay, I like that. And that is a common, that's a common question that the team usually raises us. We don't have time for our retrospective. I mean, I'm sure just the hand raise or a thumbs up. Who else has heard that exact same thing? We don't have time for a retrospective. Yeah. Well, the cool thing, you know, is that the retrospective, or the experiences that I've had with the retrospective is at the end of the sprint. And I'm in software development, so I may not understand totally the mechanical engineering process or some other process, but in software development, my experience has been we freeze the code and then we go into our review and then we go into our retrospective. So really nobody can do anything really with the code or with the user stories during this brief period of time. So it's a great time for the retrospective. So how can you not have a retrospective if you understand what its true value is? And its true value is to plan ways to increase quality and effectiveness. That's what the new Scrum Guide says. So if you're having difficulties, then for sure you got to have the retrospective because you want to improve the quality and the effectiveness. And the cool thing is, you know, teams are not built during the retrospective, but teams are continuously being built during the entire sprint or product. But it's during the retrospective when we have time to slow down, we have time to inspect and critique, but we also can adjust, as well as the time to learn and to laugh and to enjoy each other. It's where we develop that professional respect for one another. And I have just a few more minutes, but I would like to say that what happens in the retrospective doesn't stay in the retrospective. That's one of the problems that many teams have is they go, wow, we do these things in a retrospective, but there's no, actionable items that are produced from this. And that I found as a Scrum Master, I took it upon myself to make sure that when my teams would say, hey, yada, 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 we had this issue with this, then I wanted to make sure that we developed something that we carried through, whether we worked on it the next sprint or the following sprint or whenever, but made sure that we worked on it. And then I brought it to the team's attention. Do you remember when we said this? Well, this is the solution that we all agreed upon, and we have now completed this. So I think it's very important that we celebrate all of our winnings, not only in the user story arena, but also in the advancements of our self-improvement. And I think I have one more minute, so great. All right, so a lot of times in the retrospective, part of the problem is people go, I hate retrospectives. They're just so boring. Or so what do you do to liven them up? Anybody got any suggestions on that?
This is Paula. I try to never use the same types of categories with the same groups of people more than once. So I have the luxury of working with different groups of people, but I always start with the simplest. And then the second time I meet with them, it's some variety, to give them some variety.
That's important. That's important. Val, did I see you wanted to say something again?
I mean, no, I'm very similar to Paula in that respect that I knew it was boring. So I had to find ways to not spice it up, but change the conversation. And then trying to always, come back full circle to, because again, we don't have the full time to do a great retrospective. So sometimes I carry over the same conversation, but like in different ways. But it's very similar to what Paula said, is just making sure that we're bringing in new topics and keeping it fresh and new.
Cool.
And Dan,
go, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add even to Val's point about, of course, mixing up the formats, but I'm just curious, even from the group, has anyone brought in other Scrum Masters or coaches to even facilitate? Because we've done that before just to kind of mix it up. So it's a different, person or different, but we're still tracking it for actionable items, but we do try to bring someone else sometimes to mix it up.
And that's a great idea. And that's, whatever it's a self-managing team. So it doesn't have to be led by the Scrum Master. It can be led by anyone. So you bring up some points. I'm going to quit, but I'm going to say this: try Tasty Cupcakes, try Retrospective Wiki, or Google how to spice up a retrospective. Thank you for your time on this one. I'm going to pass it over to Andrea for the next topic.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, so the next pitfall that I wanted to to take a glance at is those times where it appears the Scrum Master is viewed as the person who's responsible for the team hitting the mark, getting to that sprint goal, achieving success. I see that often, and again, understanding that everybody on the team comes together and collaborates and has a voice and is able to influence and to add input and ideas and constraints around what do they want to achieve, what value can they deliver in a sprint. And it doesn't take one person that comes up with that. Do you listen to your product owner? Absolutely, who's coming in and telling you what value means to your customer and what would help deliver some win for the client or another user or a key stakeholder. And you want that perspective, but equally valuable are the voices of the developers who are coming to the table with, well, what do we need to do to increase the maturity of the product? What are some precursor things that we need to do? And all those voices result in a collaborative sprint goal. So every person on that team is ultimately responsible for the team delivering the value that they had planned and achieving that sprint goal. And what I love about the use of the sprint goal is the sprint goal may be achieved even though not all the planned work items get to done for that sprint. And that's again where you do that inspection and adaptation throughout the sprint and determine what's essential to ensure that you're on track to deliver that goal. But that's an active conversation. Sometimes you see this pitfall when there's a belief that a Scrum Master equates to a project manager. And I hate this phrase, but I wonder if you guys have heard it, you know, the one throat to choke. It makes me cringe. But I've heard that in my past associated to the role of the project manager. So that's not the case in Scrum. It is a team sport. And I know that we've talked about it. We don't succeed as individuals, we succeed as a team. So we're all essential to achieving the value and holding ourselves accountable and self-managing the way we worked to meet that sprint goal. So what we want to do as a Scrum Master, again, is put on our coaching cap and help to look for warning signs where we start to see this behavior coming to light, and working with the team, whether you do it in techniques such as Dan just shared, a retrospective. If this is something that you're seeing and you want to have a focused conversation on it, maybe as a Scrum Master, you bring it into a retrospective and you talk and you reinforce those behaviors and those practices as a Scrum team that we need to be demonstrating to ensure we all understand that we're in this together, and everybody should have the same understanding of how we're progressing towards achieving that goal. We want to make sure we value people and allow them to self-manage. I don't know about you guys, but I know I work best when I'm self-directed, when I get to figure out how I'm going to get to done. I love it. It allows me to be creative and innovative in what I do. And I appreciate what feels like trust and respect when somebody allows me to figure it out. And that's what we want to reinforce as a Scrum Master. And then ultimately, you know, there are some organizations where they do drive-bys and they want to hear how things are going, and they want to know, are you on track? Are you going to get that key milestone that, you know, I've got a stakeholder commitment that's looming. Are we doing it? Well, as part of the Scrum Guide, we know that the product owner should be in a position to absolutely speak to the product. How is it evolving? You know, we're going to be able to deliver some value, maybe not the expected value, but some of the value, and have those conversations. So you want to encourage and coach the product owner to be prepared to be that voice. And that's where, as you move into doing your sprint reviews, you know, you'd love to have that voice of the product owner presenting how the team did in terms of achieving the goal. They really understand the impact to the stakeholders. So we would want them to have an active voice. But once again, we're all accountable for understanding how we're doing as a team and being able to tell people and articulate how we're working towards achieving that sprint goal. I'm seeing some chats. What is the key differentiator between a project manager and Scrum Master, and how can we explain that to the team effectively? that's a very good topic for a future session. It can get pretty broad and pretty deep. I would have to say organizationally, we use the Scrum Guide as our way of working when we do Scrum. And it does a great job of articulating the responsibilities or the key aspects of the different roles. And you can use that to bump up against what a project manager does. But I will tell you that each organization may layer on some additional needs that they want from different roles, like a Scrum Master. So we're also know that there is a role called Agile Project Manager out there. So it really depends on your organization and how you're using the various roles on what the differences may be. And that's a really good workshop to do around roles and responsibility if you're having that sort of ambiguity. Or to have a deeper conversation if you're in maybe a retrospective, if you have both roles on the team. So great idea for a future in-depth topic, but I think there are some great reference tools, whether it's the Scrum Guide for the Scrum Master and maybe PMI for a project manager, but also understanding the reality of the world in which you operate and your organization is an important influencer there. Any other sound bites on that before we jump to the next pitfall? Okay, I'm going to toss it back over to Adam.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. This pitfall is the Scrum Master personally removes all roadblocks. Have you all seen this? What are some reasons why this happens? Opening it up to the group.
I think because they think you're a team manager. I've been correcting so many people because they're like, you manage the teams you manage. I'm like, I'm not a team manager. So
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the biggest reasons it happens. There's a conception about the Scrum Master role being more of a team manager or a project manager. And as Andrea said, it's a team sport, right? But not everybody understands that. There can be some confusion about the role. There are many other reasons why, I'm sure, as well. But we usually point people back to the Scrum Guide to find the definitions of these accountabilities and Scrum itself, right? Now, it wasn't so clear in the prior versions of the Scrum Guide. So I also think that may be one reason for it. Some Scrum Masters weren't so sure, and so they just sort of took it on because they thought it was their job, maybe. But this was made more clear by the most recent version of the Scrum Guide. So if you go check out the latest version, the current version that's out there now, you'll find that it says the Scrum Master causes the removal of impediments to the Scrum team's progress. So I really love those words they chose, not just because they clearly explain that they're the cause of the removal, but not necessarily the remover, although they could be, right? It's sort of whatever works and is very effective there. But the other thing I love about it is they also sort of qualify impediments as being those to the Scrum team's progress, right? So impediments to the Scrum team progressing, and I really like to think about it that way. Now, removing those impediments to avoid this failure pattern, understand it may or may not be the Scrum Master who's actually removing them. All right. One reason this is a pitfall has to do with the cost of the Scrum Master doing this, right? There are some costs or big impacts of the pitfall. When I talk about costs, I'm not necessarily talking specifically about monetary costs, although at the end of the day, I believe it really does kind of become that, because time is money, right? And that's where I kind of think you see these costs the most is in time. It can be very expensive because, first of all, it can take the Scrum Master longer to remove the impediment. Maybe the Scrum Master doesn't know as much about the impediment and they have to learn more to get it removed, or it's just more time consuming for them because they have trouble getting it done themselves. Sometimes they can't even do it themselves. They may not have the skills to do that. So in that case, a way to avoid the pitfalls, to coach the team members, they probably have the most firsthand knowledge of what the roadblock is. So whoever is closest to the roadblock may be the best person to remove it. And then the team can kind of collaborate on this and come up with the best answer. Another is adopt practices to help visualize roadblocks. So there are some ways we can kind of make these roadblocks visible so everyone can see them. And then that has a lot of advantages. One of them, or benefits, one of them can be that other team members see what it is, are able to see some detail about it. And if they have the skill set that best matches that removal, they can jump in and fix it. One way to do this can be an information radiator, like a big blockers board or something like that. And other ways I've seen are people just sort of highlighting the blockers in some way. So if the blocker's on a particular card, they could highlight that in red, for example, in the tool they're using, or put a big red dot on the sticky there. So I am about out of time here, and I'm going to turn it over to Dan for the next pitfall.
Thank you very much, Adam. So Scrum Master doesn't coach or teach the team Scrum essentials. Part of Scrum is time boxing. And in respect for everyone's time, we are on a time box. And so I'm a little bit short on time for mine. So, but doesn't this in and of itself help coach Scrum? We have to enforce the essentials of Scrum. We were talking about some of the events, and one of the events that is very difficult is retrospectives, and we've already talked about that. But another event is the daily Scrum. How many people abuse the daily Scrum by making it a status meeting, or it turns out to be a status meeting? Have we all felt that or had that happen to us? That's a perfect opportunity for us to say, wait a minute, I don't even have to do this meeting. I'm just the Scrum Master. I'm the Scrum Master. You guys, this meeting is for you all, the developers. It's a great time for the developers to build that team work, to practice openness, and trust, to execute focus and commitment to the spirit, to the sprint goal. That is what the daily Scrum is all about. That's a perfect opportunity for the Scrum Master to help coach the team there. Some other coaching moments. Well, I finished all the coding. Too bad the QA people didn't have time to finish their stuff. Wow. Well, that might be a perfect time to maybe talk about the definition of done again. You know, let's sit down and talk. What does done really mean for this team? You need to coach that to your team. Because like Andrea said, we are a team. And what I always, on my teams, my motto is we fail as a team, but we succeed as a team. It's always a team. I mean, we're together. How about teaching the self-management thing? You know, when the QA people didn't have time to finish their coding. Well, really, on a Scrum team, we don't have QA people, do we? We have developers. So how about if we coach our team saying, it's not specifically their job, it's my job too. It's our job to pull anyone up that needs pulling up. Does anybody have while we have just a minute or two left, does anybody have an example they want to share with the group? Oh, okay. That's great then. So you guys haven't experienced this problem. So I appreciate that. But I'm going to pass it over to Andrea so she can finish us off. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate all your engagement. It was good seeing your smiling faces.
Yes, just to echo Dan and to say thank you on behalf of Adam, Dan, and myself. Thank you all for joining us today. Our emails are here. I know there were some questions that came up in chat. Please feel free to jot those down if you have some questions you want to shoot to any one of us as coaches. But I wanted to say thank you again for your participation today. Thank you. Have a great day.